The news you sent is, well, it's a lot. We've got everything from like major global conflicts and natural disasters to, all the latest tech stuff happening. It's a lot to unpack, but that's what we're here for, right?
Hmm.
To like dive into all of it, find those kind of hidden connections, and hopefully, help you see the world a little differently.
It's true, you've given us a real challenge with all this news, but it just goes to show you how much is going on in the world right now, how fast things are changing. But I think if we can zero in on the biggest, most impactful events, it'll help us understand the bigger picture. You know what I mean?
Totally. And speaking of impactful, can we just talk about what's happening between Israel and Hamas? I mean, seriously, every time I turn around, there's some new development, airstrikes, the medics killed in Beirut, even the UN Secretary General getting blocked from Israel. Like, what is going on?
Yeah.
It feels like the situation is just escalating.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a complicated situation, and it's changing so fast. I think to really wrap our heads around it, we have to take a step back and look at the whole history of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. But even with that context, this latest escalation is especially worrying because it could really destabilize the whole region. You've got all these different players involved, each with their own agendas, and the effects are rippling way beyond Israel and Palestine.
Exactly. And it feels like those ripple effects, that's becoming a major theme. Like, take those Swedish citizens getting arrested in Denmark for those possible explosions near the Israeli embassy. That just shows you how everything's so interconnected now globally.
You got it. And it's not just diplomatic incidents. We're also seeing this huge global migrant crisis that's being driven by everything: conflict, economic problems, political instability, you name it. The migrants shot in Mexico, the Dominican Republic planning to deport all those Haitians. It's all part of this bigger, really tragic trend.
It's just awful.
Yeah.
And it really makes you think about the human costs of all these geopolitical shifts and stuff.
That's a really important point. All these events, they might seem separate on the surface, but underneath, they're often linked in some way. The conflict in the Middle East, for example, that obviously forces people to flee, to migrate, and that creates problems in other countries and regions.
It just goes to show
Yeah,
we really are living in this super interconnected world. Something happened on one side of the planet and the effects can be felt thousands of miles away. It's wild.
yeah.
And it's not just about conflict either. We talk about this interconnected world and you can't help but think about Hurricane Helene, right? It's like Mother Nature's way of reminding us that things can change in an instant and with consequences you'd never even think of.
Yeah, absolutely. The human toll is obviously the most immediate concern. And it's heartbreaking, all those people in North Carolina. But when you start to look at the impact on global supply chains, it really shows how vulnerable we are in ways we don't even realize.
Yeah, and over 1,000 U.S. soldiers deployed for rescue efforts.
Yeah.
I mean, that just shows you the scale of it. But then you read about those quartz mines getting hit, and it's like, wait, hold on. How does that affect me?
Well, that's the interesting part. Quartz, it's actually a crucial component in a lot of tech manufacturing. It's what they use to make those silicon wafers. And those wafers are what microchips are built on. And I mean, we've got microchips in everything these days.
Right. Okay, so no quartz, no chips, no phones, no laptops. It's like this chain reaction. Suddenly, a hurricane in North Carolina is messing with global tech.
Exactly. And even if the disruption is temporary, it just goes to show how much we rely on these very specific places for these really essential resources. Makes you think about, the whole idea of a globalized economy and whether it's actually as resilient as we think.
Yeah, it definitely makes you look at your gadgets a little differently. Speaking of tech, though, while we're dealing with hurricanes and supply chain issues and all that, the tech world, it just keeps on moving, doesn't it?
Right.
New features, new devices. It's almost impossible to keep up. But some of these updates, I gotta say, they're pretty cool and really useful.
Yeah.
Like Spotify's new offline playlist feature. Game changer, especially if you travel a lot.
Yeah, that's a great example of tech companies actually listening to what people need,
Yeah,
Being able to use Spotify offline, that makes a huge difference for a lot of people.
totally. And for all the health tech fans out there, the new Oura Ring has got everyone talking. Apparently, it's got even more sensors now, even better tracking capabilities, like having a mini laboratory on your finger. But it kind of makes you wonder, right? Like all these health trackers and smart devices, are they really helping or just, overwhelming us with information? It's like you're getting all this data about yourself, but are you actually using it? Or is it just, I don't know.
That's a good question. And I think even beyond the data itself, there's the whole issue of privacy. I mean, think about it. These devices are collecting so much personal information, your sleep patterns, your heart rate, even where you are every minute of the day. And it makes you wonder, how is that data being used? Who has access to it? Is it really secure?
Yeah, exactly. Like, who's looking at all this stuff and what are they doing with it? It's like this trade-off, isn't it? The convenience of having these cool gadgets versus like your own privacy. And speaking of things that can keep you up at night, we got to talk about cybersecurity. I feel like every time I check the news, there's some new threat, some new hack. It's kind of exhausting.
Yeah, it's the unfortunate reality of, well, of living in a digital world, I guess. As technology gets more advanced, the risks just become more sophisticated. And, the rise of AI-powered malware is a perfect example. Like you mentioned the Bifrost RT earlier, the fact that there's a new version that targets Linux, that's a big deal.
Okay, so for those of us who aren't like tech wizards, break it down for me. What exactly is so bad about a RT? And why is this new one such a big deal?
Imagine someone having like a secret back door into your computer. They can steal your files, they can see everything you type, even use your computer to do other shady stuff online, and you have no idea. That's basically what a RIT does, a remote access Trojan. And the reason this new Linux version is causing such a stir is because, well, Linux is generally considered pretty secure, so a lot of people using it might not be as careful as they should be.
Right. So it's like you think you're safe, but you're really not.
Yep.
Definitely makes you think twice about clicking on links and stuff.
Mm.
It all comes back to that interconnectedness we were talking about, doesn't it? Whether it's a conflict halfway across the world, a hurricane, messing with supply chains, even the technology we use every single day, it's all connected in these surprising ways. And understanding those connections, those ripple effects, well, it feels more important now than ever.
I totally agree. It's about recognizing that our choices, even the small ones, they have these bigger consequences, especially in a world that's as complex as ours. It's a lot to think about.
It really is. But hey, that's the whole point of these deep dives, right?
Uh-huh.
To get us thinking, to help us make sense of it all. So thanks for coming on this journey with us, for trusting us to, navigate these crazy times. Until next time, stay curious out there, everyone, and we'll see you on the next deep dive.